We saw that the African Development Bank, they had their summit here as well last week, and our president pledged 20 billion shillings to the African Development Bank. And here we've borrowed how much? Right? Or Korea is actually, we're getting that particular, is it 30 billion shillings? Well, let's just begin, broadly speaking, about this particular latest development.
I think we need to know the function of the state. A state is very different from a company, a corporation, and therefore when the states are supposed to meet. In fact, the sole purpose of the states is to interact with others. That's the whole purpose of diplomacy, as long as it is aligned to the agenda that you want to achieve. So I don't find something extremely wrong with summits. The only thing I don't like is the bundling of Africans. You know, because we have 54 or 55 African countries, depending on who is counting. And out of those, the West, the West and the East somehow think that Africa needs to be met as a whole country to save time, because hopping from one country to another is difficult. Then we find some of the Western countries like America are using the concept of major powers, and therefore they don't meet everybody. They meet one country. Kenya is identified as one of the core of those countries: Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and possibly Algeria or Morocco, whichever the countries preferred. These are what they are calling the regional powers. That is one approach. And you remember the British through what was her name? Theresa May.
Theresa May.
Yeah, Theresa May is one of those who started that policy of major power approach to Africa. The whole idea is, how do you get the whole of the continent in one meeting? Then you talk to them, because it's not necessary to talk to the whole whole continent one by one country. To take 55 days to do that. So that is the dilemma. And remember, when President William Ruto came to power, one of the things he complained about is that. What I don't know is what had happened now, because we are now hopping from one summit to another. I think that was the reason why we gave not to attend the Russia-Africa summit last year. That's what we said. This year, FOCAC, Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, is coming. We need to say, are we attending or not? Now, the big issue is that countries are guided by their interests. You attend summits of countries where you as a country is funded. And therefore, the United States is very, very important for Africa. So anything Africa, United States is important. China is very important for Africa because of the funding and infrastructure partnerships. Then that is that. What I find is, and I'm not meaning countries, Italy, Africa Summit, Korea, Africa Summit, this summit. Some of them you just need to do pick and choose. But let's emphasize that attending or being party to meetings is not negative, because you are looking at your interest. Which country is funding, is your partner in development? That's what you attend. Also understand the dilemmas of Africa's partners. It's very, very difficult to meet 55 countries one by one. At the same time, our individual African countries are bringing onto the table different things. Take, for example, Chad. Chad is bringing what on the table? Uranium, oil, and so on. You look country like Benin, the same case, you're being titanium, you know, all the special minerals that are now used for IT. So I think that there is that whole question. As far as Kenya funding the Africa Development Bank, it's not really, I don't think it's really funding. It's a question of making its contribution so that you can also get your dues as a TVR. We need to understand the concept better, and I'm sure we can get the relevant officers to explain what that means. What I do know is that we have made our contribution to IGAD. I remember President Kenyatta giving $1 million to the African Union. $1 million. We're not talking about shillings. $1 million to African Union at some stage. So Kenya makes its contribution because, as I said, we are a major country, and our regional affair is funded by our governments, and therefore Kenya does the contribution. I'm sure you're familiar with the story that has been running this week about the East African community.
Yes.
And countries in Africa, in the region, apart from Kenya, no other country is contributing. Somalia is new, therefore it's not expected to contribute. But somebody in a very...
Is it not expected to contribute?
No, for now, for this year. I'm saying it cannot be accused of defaulting because it has just joined.
Okay.
But somebody concluded that Somalia is going to follow suit because of the trend.
Defaulting.
In defaulting. So the big question is the top too heavy for Africa to carry? We have so many regional economic communities, so many of these initiatives. Is there a way we can lessen the burden? Take, for example, in this region alone, we have about 4 RECs. Actually 5 that we are competing with. So is it logical to fund all of them? We have the Indian Ocean Commission, we have IGAD, we have East African Community, we have COMESA in this region, we have ICAS,
we have
Economic Community of Southern Africa State. Now I'm talking about the East Africa alone. SADC is in South Africa. We're talking about
Tanzania.
But Tanzania is also in SADC.
Yeah. Tanzania is in SADC.
Yeah, Tanzania is in SADC. Congo is in SADC. It is in East African Community. I think it's time for Africa basically to put its house in order by aligning its regional economic communities to specific region. Rwanda is a member of 2, East African Community and ICAS. The same case with Burundi. Now here we are in COMESA, we are in East African Community, we are in IGAD, and we have to contribute to all those. In addition to
Red Sea Authority.
Yeah, we are also members of the Red Sea Authority.
We don't have any what do you call water boundary with the Red Sea.
Is it a Red Sea Council or the Red Sea
Authority?
Authority?
It's an authority which has been created, yes.
So
largely by Western, yeah.
Yes. So in short, we have some serious work to do in aligning our interests and our participation in these organizations, because we might have to spend a whole half of our year and half of our foreign policy budget moving to these conferences and congresses.
Right. Let's hear from Farah Malim. Good morning, good to see you. You've had a voice, of course, and also Professor Mashara Munene as well. Especially now the East African, but let's begin further with the Korea Summit and what they're saying here. We have your pale in hand, as you can see depicted there in the cartoon, going for more loans, concessional loans, that is, and of course also you're disbursing here monies to the African Development Bank. Is there any rhyme or reason for this? Why would you give when you don't have? And then you give and then you borrow.
But you see, let me now tell you something about this governments and international borrowing and giving. America is is actually the most indebted country in the world.
Yes.
And it gives out the biggest size of aid. So you can question yourself, why does it give out billions and billions in aid when it has this massive debt that it has from all over? Some of the bonds in America, the biggest holders are the Chinese, Japanese.
Yep.
Japan's debt is 140.
It's 249.
249 of the GDP.
Yes.
GDP.
Yes.
Dollars.
In dollars.
In dollars, yes.
Well, you know what GDP? GDP is basically the gross domestic products. That is all the services and all the industrial products and everything that's the agricultural products put together. So Japan has got a debt more than 2.5 times what it's worth. And they're there giving out massive aids. So in a way, I have no problem myself with us borrowing. I have also no problem with us giving out money to such institutions like African Development Bank, because we want to hold a bigger stake in it because Africa is a minority shareholder in the African Development Bank, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
Yes.
We have the list as a continent. So if we can boost our own so that we are able to sit with the big boys on the table there, the big shareholders, then I think it's worth it. As to how much we borrow, I have no problem with borrowing. But I have a serious problem with how we spend that money that we borrow. That's where the problem is. Most of this authority, Korea for us is a good place. I've been to Korea myself. I went one time for a model in a postgraduate class in a place called Daejeon, in a very prestigious business school called Seoulbridge. And when you see where they were when we got independence and where they are now, and how their president, Park Chung-hee, could not get $1 million to spare for him to go around the world, and he came and borrowed it from Kenyatta. And today, I think the GDP is how many times? It's what, 2.4 trillion or 2.8 trillion? And ours is what, 130 billion? It's good for us to go there, not at the level of the head of state, but to have that relationship in which we go and study the development model. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and see what we can borrow from. Because they borrowed from us the little money we had that time, and we can also go and borrow from them the good ideas they have that has been able to take them where they are. So any exchange for me with a developed country is a good thing. The only thing I don't want is not at the level of 40, 50 heads of states. That's very, very, it's demeaning. It just tells you, and then what we have out there with the ball in hand, and you run into this, you run into that. We were not that desperate when we got independence, and we're much weaker than what we are now. I remember very well that the Russian president, Podgorny, I don't know who remembers Podgorny.
There was such a name.
Macharia is older than me, I think, or probably my age group, so he would remember that. Podgorny came to visit Mogadishu to go and meet with Siad Barre and the government that was there those days, and signed a very powerful both security as well as an economic pact. So we were that respected those days. We were immediately after independence, we held our heads high. The very one thing that we never wanted, there was an anathema, is to be looked down upon. To see 40 or 50 of your own heads of states lining up just to greet one person and get a photo in a bus. And I've had a very bad experience in here. I was a deputy speaker in this country. I said a few awful things about what America was doing to many countries in the world those days, which is basically a democratic right that everybody enjoys. And including the very careless bombings through drones that they used to do in a neighboring country like Somalia, and killing innocent people. And I was the deputy speaker, I was supposed to lead a delegation to the US, and I was denied a visa. And let me tell you what happened immediately we got independence. Immediately we got independence, 2 Kenyans went to Heathrow Airport, London, and basically wanted, I don't know if Heathrow existed at that time, was another airport that time, I think it was Heathrow, and they were turned back because of a few questions. How much pounds do you have? Those guys were still racist those days. They had never, reset their mind to understand that these black people who you think are basically slaves and housemaids and house servants for you are now independent people with their own flag. So they were sent back here. Kenyatta was told 2 Kenyans were sent back from London. He called Mutua, the principal immigration officer, I don't know if you remember him, and told Mutua, look for 2 high-value Brits and send them back. There are 2 guys who are coming from a multinational outfit that were coming to their own subsidiaries in here, and they came through with a business class, first class, whatever it was those days. You remember the Boeing 707 and the rest of them, and immediately sent back. Told, go back. When the Brits protested, Kenya government told them, this is what you did to our own. If you don't respect us, we will not respect you.
Reciprocity.
Yes, reciprocity. Reciprocity is the most important thing in diplomacy, in the dignity. 3 things: Pan-Africanism and emancipation of Africa, independence of Africa. Restoration of the dignity of the black man.
Yep.
Economic emancipation. Self-determination for those countries that were still under colonialism. Listen to me.
Right.
Self-determination for those countries that were still under colonialism. We had that when we got independence. That's why Nyerere risked everything, including his own country and Kaunda and the rest of them, to fight alongside the Frelimo and, you know, the ANC and the SWAPO and all those ones in Namibia. Today, young boys and girls who were probably born during that time, who are in leadership in Africa, are willing to kowtow to the white man or any other person there and literally go down on their own knees. I was part of a delegation that was supposed to go to Canada the other day as a member of the Speaker's panel, which is the Presidium of Parliament. And because of this, my own position on LGBTQ, and because of my own position on what's happening in Gaza and the rest of it, they did not give me a visa. Ordinarily, denying such a high status functionary of your own country, you send back people immediately. You tell them, I need an explanation, or else I'll reciprocate it. And at the same time...
So did they explain that?
No, I explained myself to no. What they do is that they just tell you that, sorry, and tell you, come and take your passport back. They will not tell you that we've denied you the visa.
Yes.
It's a soft, clever way of telling you we've denied the visa. And we get into our country without even an advance visa. Eric Prince, who calls for the recolonization of Africa. Extreme right-wing racists who think you are no better than a monkey will walk into our country the way they want and walk out of it, and even insult you at the airport. But here we are, basically. I mean, it's sad, let me tell you. So when you see what we're seeing out in here, Africa has been recolonized. And who has been recolonized? At the leadership level, at that head level.
Right. Let's hear from Professor Munez as well on that particular development. This is the first that we can see from South Korea. Is it joining the fray of the summits that we've been having? And what is the interest at the end of the day?
I think they've done it before.
You've done it? No, they say this is the first one.
No, Korea is the first one.
Korea,
For Korea, this is
the whole thing started with the Japanese. They're the ones who cooked up this thing.
The T-card.
Call all the Africans together, tell them what you want, and then you go.
At least the Japanese gave us some, yeah.
Then the Chinese copied. And then the others copied. So they are all copying. Now, it is essentially a disgrace, not for Korea to summon them.
But for us to go there.
It is for the heads of state, the government, to go. Having said openly that it will never happen again, and they are the first to go. There's something wrong with that.
Did they say it will never happen again? Or they express their displeasure of how they're being handed like sheep in a bus and being, of course, assembled?
I think President Ruto said it will not happen again. That will be sending 1 or 2 people to represent the country. That's what he said.
Yeah, and the proposal that the African Union
should be the one
representing the African states.
Yes. So they should the assembly will be or should be at the Africa Union, and then the head of state, if it's from South Korea, they go there.
They go, there's anyway, the picture is not very good of that. It shows desperation on the part of the Africans leaders who need some rethinking and maybe some better advice than they have, whoever is advising them. But the problem with the advice they get is that they outsource advice, and the source of the advice is never their country, it's somewhere else. So they advise to go, and they all pack their bags and go. Some of them travel very expensively. In
private jets.
In private jets in such places. And just to go and be seen and pep talked.
There's no pep talk, just Fourth opportunity.
And then be promised maybe we shall think about what to give you when we meet again. The problem is not South Korea, and it's not even the United States or China or
It's the
Japan.
African leaders.
It is our leaders. They are the problems. Because if I was talking about reciprocity, when Nigeria was a self-respecting country some times ago, and I had some ability to react, there is a similar story that Heathrow Airport had decided the Nigerian Airways will not be landing in Heathrow. Now the British government.
To go to Gatwick.
To go to Gatwick.
Yeah.
Instead of Heathrow. And the Nigerians protested. And they were told this is an internal matter. So they said, okay. So within a short time, they declared that the British Airways
cannot land in Lagos.
Should be landing in Port Harcourt.
Yes.
And when they were, no, it's an internal matter.
Yes.
And the British quickly changed the position. Reciprocity. And that's ability to respond that way shows the maturity of the country, and that it can talk about being independent and self-respecting. We talk about the unmatched treatment. People come from the Western country. They don't need visas. They just show up at the airport, say I'm a tourist, get in.
Given whatever they want.
Just pay $50 and they just get in. Now, if we were to be fair, the sort of thing that Kenyans go through to get a visa to go to Britain, that's what the British should also be getting.
Subjected to.
Yeah, the same thing. That's reciprocity. And to say that, oh, you are going to attract tourists, that's nonsense. It's demeaning. Because if they do not respect you,
why should you?
Why would you want to kowtow to these people? There was an incident some time ago. A bad person, I said it's a bad person, yeah? He was British, but of Nigerian background, yeah? And he was suspected not to be very good. And I think our security people picked him. And said, this person is dangerous.
Person of interest.
Yeah. So the British government, I understand, intervened. He's their man. They say, okay, you have to take your man. That's the man who went to kill soldiers in London, yeah? Same man. So we say, now, what? You should thank Kenya for having pointed out that this man is
dangerous.
Dangerous. But that's the bad treatment we have had, that our people in positions of responsibility are not able to protect Kenya's interests.
Yeah.
The way they should.
And Kenya's dignity.
And Kenya's dignity. We have now, we're talking about all these people being added in an aeroplane to go to Seoul.
And in a bus sometimes.
And there's a bus waiting for them. So you say, where is the dignity in this thing? I mean, a respectable country would have said they send the vice president or deputy somebody to represent, or the minister of foreign affairs, and with a brief, they say that this is what we go and do this, but not to subject the president to that sort of thing.
Humiliation.
And then you feel as if you've achieved something. It's awkward. Of course,
yes,
we could do better than we are doing.
Yes. Right. Let's say from Ken Obonge, I think also the issue at hand is, the minerals. They say no critical development of minerals. That is one of the deeper ties they want with Africa at the end of the day. So is that the interest?
Well, of course. I mean, it just goes without saying that in diplomatic play right now, what is at stake is the African natural resources. Because that's all we have as a continent. But Dibal, away from that, and away from what Mheshimiwa Farah and Prof is expressing, the Korea-Kenyan kind of relationship has a certain interesting dimension, if you ask me. Korea seems to have gotten its act well, particularly in ICT development, in electronics, and also in areas of superconductivity. I don't know, if you looked around this table, Prof. Kawanja, which phone do you have there?
It's iPhone.
It's an iPhone, okay.
It's a Samsung.
Yeah, Mheshimiwa, which phone do you have?
I have an iPhone too, but Samsung is the best.
Okay.
I want to change from Samsung now. It's better. I want to change from Samsung.
I have a Samsung.
I have a Samsung as well.
Samsung
It
is
is
Korean. The Daewoo.
It's supposed to be Samsung. You always call it Samsung, but it's Samsung.
That's according to their pronunciation. So the Samsung that you're calling it, the Daewoo, the Hyundai, these are all Korean products and brands. They seem to have gotten something right, and we have something to learn from there. In fact, some aspects of what we call Konsa City were modeled on the Korean Institute of Science and Technology, if I'm not wrong. And I remember there's a time we hosted them at the University of Nairobi to talk to us about Korean technology. So, friends, we have one or two things to learn from Korea. How we go there begging, or how we approach them could probably be an issue. We are talking about a disconnect between our words and our deeds. We say this, we do that. Our president expressed his displeasure quite a while back, especially I think they were in London and Paris, and then he was very articulate about this, and I expected that something different will follow. What that goes to show is that there could be a difference probably between well thought out and articulated government foreign policy and what is said at the spur of the moment. Perhaps we need to begin to interrogate this, what one can loosely call, I don't know whether that term is acceptable, strategic ad hocism, where ad hoc statements are made, and then a couple of months down the line, you realize that they were not products of clearly well thought out foreign policy engagement.
This is akin to broadside declarations.
Yes. If you want to use that concept.
Because that is still ad hoc.
Yeah, that now makes it imperative to the formulators of our foreign policy in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the different directorates that are there, that they need to raise up to the occasion and actually help the leaders of the country to understand what is at stake for us as a country, barring all the biases and the jingoistic feelings that we could be having as individuals. For me, that is extremely important. And we need to understand, and I've said this in this forum, that when you look at the situation around us right now, my teacher of history is here, we are going through what I can loosely call the scramp and partition of Africa too. The difference between the one of the 1880s, crowned by the Berlin Conference of 1884-85, is that some level of willingness from our end is solicited this time round. The 1884, the African Melony, so to call it, was shared without our consent. Right now, we are giving some level of consent. Unless then we wake up to this international reality, then, my friends, we are going to sell cheap, if we have not sold cheap already. And that is a little bit painful. You come closer home. We were talking about the development of regionalism. The multiple regional organizations that we have, that when you look at them critically, don't make economic sense, honestly. If you look at the amounts of resources that we are spending to be members of IGAD, to be members of COMESA, to be members of EAC and all that. But this divided loyalty within the region and the continent is informed by mutual trust, mutual mistrust among African countries. You know very well in this region, the relationship between Kenya and Tanzania, or Kenya and the rest of East Africa, is characterized by the distrust of Kenya. That's fairly obvious. So Tanzania is ever having one leg in EAC and another one in SADC. You know, multiple identities in regional organizations is actually becoming our greatest undoing.
Thank you.
And then Kenya behaves like a big brother. So we want to make contributions to IGAD. We are probably the only ones who are now contributing to IGAD, if I'm not wrong, the last time I checked. EAC, we are the earliest and the first ones to contribute.
Of course, we rebased our economy, so we are the big brother.
Yeah, so we need to ask the questions of what are we getting out of this in return.
Right. I think it's Faramount. You wanted to contribute just before, just briefly. He's good at a brief rejoinder.
Yeah, you see, Kenya has a habit of looking as if it is big, and being to be seen to be big. Yeah, who is it that gives aid, and who gets aid? Those who give aid feel very good giving it because they are looking big and looking down on somebody, and those who get it feel
subservient.
It's subservient, and that's why some countries have refused. You give them aid, they say we don't want aid. We worry about our problem. I think India is one of those countries that says we don't want your aid, so that it can do things on its own. So it's, Kenya is trying to play big, and we know the president has been trying very hard to be seen to play in the big leagues. Yeah? That one is there. So to be speaking for Africa. You know, the other thing is we talk about Korea, and that we were the same level, they were slightly higher, and for us we actually gave them a little money, startup money, and they did very well. But the attitude is different. Korea concentrated on producing for its own market first. Not importing. You produce for its own market. And that's why it's developed all these electronic gadgets for its own market, and the vehicles for its own market. And then the surplus you send out. That's what they did. They also were very careful not to be overwhelmed by advice from the wrong quarters. Remember, sometimes we had a discussion with some Koreans on how they did it. And they kind of say, you know, listen, just do your own thing, yeah? But don't tell them. Yeah? Do your own thing, but don't. Otherwise, they'll crush you. Now, the part of the reason maybe Korea came to Kenya to borrow money is even the way Korean embassy was established here. If you read William Atwood, who was... So he explained
the racist,
that
ambassador.
The North Koreans were here trying to establish an embassy, just like the South Koreans. And South Koreans were doing nothing, just enjoying themselves. So it was Atwood who made sure that the North Koreans don't establish an embassy here. Just collect people, go and pay homage to somebody, and then the next day the North Koreans were out.
Kenyatta.
And the South Koreans were in. So you can see maybe that close contact, that gestures could mean this or that.
Right.
It's something else. So the attitude is the main thing.
Right. I think it's Peter.
Yes.
No, it's me.
No, it's him. Then we come to
the circle.
Right. We begin with it.
Did you forget the circle?
The circle begins there. All right.
What I know is that this is the second time he has a shot at it when I've not even had one. And anyway, let's continue.
All right.
So I think what we should be concentrating.
I wanted to ask, especially before you even go to your point, because we bring it closer home. We recently discovered that we have coltan here in the country.
Yes.
And you can see, you've mentioned Samsung, That is, of course, the turnkey project as a country. Is a symbol of South Korea, so to speak. We have also the electronic vehicles as well. So, with our discovery and this flash of interest from South Korea, how are we also trying to maybe come up with a robust policy on how this coltan will be extracted, and what is the interest? If we know, we also get any transparency out of these deals that have been made, that we have this particular concessional loan, but what are we paying as the opportunity cost for it?
I think one of the things that surprised me in some of my studies, we have within the Africa Policy Institute, which I had, a special project on energy, which started off as a partnership with an international company. But now, for us, it is the study component of it. And I was shocked to find that Kenya is one of the net exporters of the new strategic energy minerals, including rare earth. But we really don't know. The reason being that this is not listed as one of our top exports. We keep on talking about tea, coffee, pyrethrum, whatever it is, the agricultural products. Now we are hyping up on avocado and mango juices or mangoes in whichever form. But the truth of the matter is that this country of ours is basically becoming one of the countries that have those kind of special minerals. We've mentioned cobalt, we have rare earth in the whole of Kware and most parts of the coast. But you know what they're doing? They sometimes they say they're constructing roads, or they're doing some quarrying or something, and they carry the whole soil because it's cheaper to do that. There's an anecdote. I need to be corrected if I'm wrong, but it's a research. Now we have been doing this, sisal in this country, growing sisal where, and according to the records, it is that sisal companies are not making profit. So they are sometimes tax exempt and so on. Little do you know that what is recorded as what they grow, or what they are growing and they are exporting to our market or other market is actually not what they are exporting. It's not the gunny bags, it's not the sisal fiber, it's actually the liquid of the sisal, because it's a very important component in the cough syrups and related medicines. And it is not a surprise that those who invest in sisal come from the same zone in Europe, and they are biomedical experts in those areas. But for us, we exempt them, and who is interested in this liquid coming from some sisal, which is because we don't know. It's very itchy. We don't know until later, almost 100 years, 100 years or 70 years, you get to know that what has been exported every year from Kenya is not the gunny bag, it's not the strings, it's actually that very strategic liquid, which is core to pharmaceutical industry. So we need to advance our knowledge of what we have and basically evaluate so that we benefit from our resources. The rare earth, they're just taking the soil, putting it in the ship, and it's processed elsewhere. Because for us, it is soil anyway, but we don't know what is in there. Indeed. And therefore, we need to be careful about that in terms of minerals. And the same case with the Congo. If you get the videos of cobalt, coltan. There is coltan and cobalt in Eastern Congo. And why Eastern Congo is always in problems, Ituri region, for example, is because of these minerals. And when you go there are holes that are gaping because they're just scooping the soil and going with it. Get a video of Eastern Congo and you'll see what we're talking about. So it is no longer the scramble for Africa. The scramble is over. It is basically the hemorrhaging of Africa. This is what they're doing. They're hemorrhaging us in all these ways. And there's nothing wrong in that, because exchange is the basis of human civilization. Indeed. It is equitable exchange, that we know what we are selling and we get the worth of what we are selling. That's a big issue. Now,
But we've set up the Safaricom at least will be manufacturing their own phones here.
yes,
If we were to benchmark with what South Korea is doing
yes.
in terms of the phone, why would we want to import our Colton there? To export our Colton there, vis-a-vis supporting this manufacturing firm and supporting Safaricom, all right, with these particular shares that we know. We don't know what negotiations have been on this particular table. We always told, oh, these were the concessional loans, but we don't know what are some of the clauses on the contractual agreement over this. Because this is not a public...
Who did the negotiation?
Who did the negotiation in the first place?
Let's make the point. The problem is not them versus us.
It's
It
us.
is
That's what I'm
us.
asking us.
It is us because we are holding the wrong end of the stick. First, I think it's Dr. Bongi who said, we don't first of all look at the market out there. We saturate our own internal markets. Therefore, we produce for our own market first. We started with a car, which was really hyped at that time, called the Nyayo car.
Pioneer.
The Nyayo Pioneer car. Now, people talked about the Uhuru car. We have never even moved to that extent. Dirito Mureithi looked like not a serious governor when he talked about like if you're producing a tuk-tuk. Can you imagine us, we are importing tuk-tuk for our villages? Shame on us. But why would we import tuk-tuk? Why, for example, would we be importing boda-bodas at this age and time?
Motorcycles.
And motorcycles. Why would we be doing the motorcycles here?
Anyway, Dibar,
Yeah.
So this is a point.
All right.
let me now tell you something. We have so many stories of things that happened in this continent, 100 years, 100 plus years. About 100, and we're now in 224. About almost 120 years ago, Jubaland used to be part of Kenya. Jubaland was extending all the way to Garissa and Wajir and Mandera.
You are the first one to admit that.
Yes.
That's a shock.
That's the point. Maybe Kenya itself is a creation.
No.
It's a creation. It's
Up
a
to
white man's-
1924.
Yeah, up to
I know
1924.
I know what you're talking about.
Well, if I had those ones today, I'll have the president in this country. We never imagined a Kikuyu being a president. I wouldn't have.
Oh, that one is coming.
Anyway, no.
That is on its way.
This is just with a light joke. And there was a man and his children, grandchildren around. Not the children, but the grandchildren around. It was called Galef in Kismayu when it was just a small place. Kismayu was there.
Where they used to hang us.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
The rebellious
Yes,
Mount
yes.
Kenya
They
people were
hanged many, not only Mount Kenya, even those Somalis who fought the British were hanged there.
Oh, okay.
Most of them actually were not hanged in there, they were hanged in Mauritius and you never know, other places. But let me tell you what. There was a man called Galef, and his children and grandchildren are still, grandchildren are around. I think the last son must have passed on by now. He was sitting somewhere like this, and the Dio passed by, the white Dio, with Askaris on both sides. The expectation was that when the Dio is passing, the Mzungu is passing near, Sahib, whatever they call him those days, Sir, that everybody would stand. And we were told, you stand. I said, why should I stand for him? He refused to stand. So the Mzungu Dio came to him and told him, go away, Shenzi, Nakatakusimama, and kicked him. The Askaris came and, roughed him up and they left. He thought about it and he decided, kicking me, me, I'm not a man if I can accept another man to kick me. He came to the same spot the following day, but this time with a spear, and refused to stand again. He was then kicked again one more time by the same white man, and he plunged the thing into his stomach. And he made it in such a manner that, there used to be those spears which were like this, but then carved on the edges, which means when you take it out, it brings out the stomachs and everything. And those days, the guns were the bolt action type, which you take time to shoot. So then he launched it at these guys. Askaris ran and he took off. And died a natural death after fighting the British God knows how many more times. Now, I look at that 115, 120 years ago. That is the pride we had. And today, I'm watching 50 plus African heads of state.
25.
25, okay, 25 of them. Let me tell you, even in our case here, I've had opportunities to sit down with Kibaki. I've had opportunities to sit down with Moi because I've been a politician for all this time when they were there, and Uhuru and the rest of them. When they come to the region or whatever it is, the first thing they do is that we sit for breakfast, and the president interacts with everybody. Everybody. And then we walk together to the place of discussions. You get my point? The only place where you find that everybody is seated and the boss comes and everybody stands up again, and then that's the time you sit, and when the boss sits and is in corporations, big corporations, you know what I mean? Even in our normal daily discourse, I've sat with Ruto, I've sat with Uhuru, I've sat with everybody. I mean, Moi all the way down. The only person I've ever sat with was Kenyatta. Who, those days I was not in public life. And that is exactly the thing. That Moi would sit with us, talk to everybody, and then we go for breakfast, or we go for lunch. But then look at what is happening here now. All the African heads of states are supposed to be seated. Then this one man comes, and when he passes and he chooses to greet you is when you stand up now to greet him and with a bow. You get my point? And that is what everybody is. Look at that now. Some of them are very anxious to be greeted by him, but then he can't greet everybody. So he moves on and chooses, and some will even clap on the side. You know,
he forgot Samir's hand.
Samir, yeah. He has forgotten Samir's Suruhu's hand.
Yes.
Somebody was begging to be greeted.
To greet him, and he went to the other side. Because the other one was also clapping, so he must have had, you know, I don't know whether he's from Madagascar or Mauritius. There's a little bit of a mixed blood guy there. So basically, I mean, I would never accept that myself today as an ordinary member of parliament, and I don't think my son, who is 24 years old in the university, would accept that. You understand my point? Yeah. Something has got to be done for the dignity of the black man to be restored. You know what I told Ranenberger and his team last time when they denied my visa? I said, thank you very much. I have never gone to a country for a holiday. I'm in the most beautiful country in the world. Yeah. If I had to have a place to go to enjoy myself, I've never gone to the West anytime. Yeah. For other than going for a bit of a coursework there, or going for business, or going for what you call official purposes. Why do you think we would die to go out there? In any case, all those who went out there are coming back. I'm sure you know that. Yeah. All the Kenyans who went out there. We are back here. You're back yourself. All the ones who went in there, out there, got some jobs in there and tried to stay there. And they can't manage. They have to come back. So basically what I'm trying to say is that unless we are able to get our dignity right and feel, you see, there was a demonstration in Alabama way back, you know, the transport workers demonstration. You know what that said? No, sorry, the sanitary workers demonstration. I am a man. Listen, I am a man. That was on the boards, which means I am a man like you. All men are created equal. You get my point? You're not going to give me segregated toilets. I'm supposed to clean both toilets, but I can't use the one I've cleaned now, which is on the white man's side. You know those days, eh? You know, the sanitary workers there, who are all blacks, by the way, would clean their toilets out there and clean all their bathrooms and washrooms and the rest of it, but they cannot use it. When they have to go to the other side to go and use it. Use the one set aside for blacks. And he said, I am a man. Essentially meaning, I am a man. A man means mankind, man and woman. So unless we are able to free ourselves from that kind of a mindset, that disgusting, dastardly way of looking at life, which my grandfather's colleague Galef refused to accept those days. Let me tell you one thing. And by the way, when the one thing that the British colonial administration would never do in northeastern province those days, in Garissa and in parts of Jubaland, was to seize the camels of those Somalis. The moment they seized them, they would come and destroy them. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
So basically what it means is that you have to have, we need to do something. Moral rearmament for the continent has got to. That young man, I don't see him here. Do you see Traore there? Is he there?
No.
I don't think he would come.
No. You can't even find the foul, the Senegalese.
No, they will not go there.
Yeah.
They went to Russia because
they
went to Russia. Those people. Traore was of Niger. Yeah. No, Traore is Burkina Faso. Yeah, Traore went to because there was a special invitation to him by Putin, and Putin met him alone for hours. You get my point? I mean, we say in our language, where you place yourself is where everybody's going to place yourself. You place yourself up there, everybody's going to respect you. You place yourself down here,
we need to take a short break.
We need to take a short break.
As we take a short break, Mheshimiwa, I hear your lamentations and the cry.
I'm not crying.
Oh, well, fine. I'm just using it figuratively.
Yes.
But the fundamental question we need to ask ourselves as Africans, we cannot walk around with dignity unless we feed ourselves. We cannot walk around with dignity unless we can find a way of employing our young people instead of sending them to do manual work in other people's countries. We cannot walk with dignity unless we do the basics for ourselves. Friends, look at our own capital city, our nation's capital, that has just become a big open sewer. If we cannot fix these small things, they actually pierce right at our self-esteem when you go somewhere else and see what the other people have done. You will not walk up straight because you know the next thing you will do is to go there and beg for food. In my cultural orientation, the worst thing a man can do
is to beg for food.
Is to beg for food and not to feed your children, feed your family, feed your wife. In fact, we don't call you a man. So with that,
there's just one thing.
My music is up.
One thing. You see, let me tell you one thing. One of the smallest countries in Africa is Eritrea. Did you watch the Eritrean president, the demeanor of the Eritrean president when he was sitting there? He refused to look back.
But why is he there?
Hang on a minute. Okay, maybe the question that he refused to look back. When everybody else was looking back to stand up and greet that, he refused to look back. It is self-sufficient in food production. Most of it is mountainous and everything else. The arable part of its land is very small, self-sufficient. It's not what you call burdened down with debts, the way we're burdened down with debts itself. It's a social security country. You get my point? They maintain a very powerful military that essentially has to be done for the sake of protection of the sovereignty of the country and the independence because of the neighboring problems out there. So basically, it's the way you carry yourself. First, you carry yourself with dignity, and you tell your people, carry yourselves with dignity and go ahead and produce.
Indeed.
And if you can't do that,
thank you.
Then of course.
Right, and of course...
It starts with the dignity. It doesn't start with the other way around.
Thank you, Faro. We take a short break right now. Having a pail in hand, of course, is not dignity for the African countries, as it were. Maybe we need to rethink and relook at that as well. And even when they come with these investments here in the country, we need to question. I remember in 2016, we had the Volkswagen putting up their plant here. After we had a big scandal worldwide there in America, I think that was a place where we had the defeat devices that were, detected by the Americans on where they were cheating about the emissions, nitrogen oxide emissions into the air. Did we also, as a country, do a robust investigation on how these disassembled parts of Volkswagen are coming into the country, and we have a system also to detect whether also this country is assembling this Volkswagen and they're not emitting the same that was being emitted in America with the defeat devices. These are things that we should think about also as a country when it comes to these bilateral relations as well at the end of the day. They're all selfish interest. As we were born naturally human being with this atavistic, proclivity to try and think about ourselves